Hi guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning into the Sovereign Path. So today we're going to talk about ego death and the dark night of the soul, and some of the things that I see often coming up with my coaching around this specific sort of, I guess we could call it like difficulty, right? Probably the most difficult aspect of an awakening path is ego death and the dark night. And the reason I want to talk about this today is because there's a point at which basically you just need to let things ride. There's a point at which in a lot of phases of this path that you're just gonna have to just let go and let things ride. Let go of the steering wheel and allow the process to unfold. Trust the process that's coming from within you to unfold. And this is certainly the most crucial point of the path that you have to do this. And so when you're in the throes of ego death, right? When the dismantling of the program is coming up, when the anger is coming through, or when the sadness is coming through, when the mind is trying to use all sorts of different tools and modalities to ease the friction, right? To ease the suffering, to sort of bend back on, who you used to be and trying to reclaim the person who you know yourself as, right? The person who the ego identification knows itself as, in order to, have some sort of relief, right? Get off the path. I have so many people come into my coaching calls and they ask me, like, how do I make this stop? How do I make this easier? The tools aren't working right now and I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do, right? This is like, one of the parts of the path that I have probably the most compassion for and the most empathy for, considering my ego death was brutal and long, and I didn't have any sort of outside anything to understand exactly what was happening and all of those sort of things, any lean-tos. And so when people come to me in this state, I get it, right? I fully get it. I've been there, done that, gone through it, the whole thing. And I always say this, you don't stay here, right? You're not going to be here for the rest of your life. This isn't a never-ending, ego dismantling. This is not a never-ending dismantling of the program, dismantling of the shadows, all of those things that you're constantly having to face. But at the same time, it is a part of the path that you do have to allow to move through you. And so that means you have to allow yourself to feel what's coming up, right? You have to allow yourself to be in the fire that is literally consuming all of the lower vibratory program and the lower vibratory conditioning and the lower state that has been held within your chakra system for however long, right? So we have to remember that when we're talking about going through an awakening path, going through an ascension path, we're talking about having a tremendous amount of energy flood our entire physical vessel, right? The Kundalini rising, Kundalini awakening. We're talking about having a tremendous amount of energy flood into our higher chakras for the divine feminine, higher awareness, higher intuition, higher knowing, downloads, upgrades, the signs, the syncs, the awarenesses, all of that just flooding online. But in order to hold this energy, right? In order to allow your vessel to open, allow your energy to open to hold this energy, so much of the density has to be flushed. It has to be released. There's no room, right? There's no room in here to hold this higher state of awareness and higher state of consciousness if you're still running these lower vibratory states and you're still clung on to, the condition of, I have an abandonment wound, or I have a rejection situation happening, or I feel unworthy, or I have a victim consciousness, program or script that I'm running and I feel like I was abandoned, and so I'm really still very, very angry, at the twin, or even at, parents or caregivers or, siblings, or all of those sorts of things that culminate into the experience that we've come here to have, right? All of that during ego death in the dark night, all of that gets hit, right? It's not just with the twin, as I've said in a lot of my videos. This isn't about just being balanced with the twin, being neutral with the twin. This is about going through a literal spiritual awakening, which hits every single solitary aspect of you that you can no longer carry as you move into higher states of awareness, right? As you move into your higher natural vibratory state. And so the ego death is a crucial part of this. And that means allowance of releasing, allowance of standing in the fire, right? Allowance of allowing this emotion to come through you, allowing yourself to cry, allowing yourself to scream into a pillow, allowing yourself to be angry, right? Allowing that stuff to come up and move through without trying to dictate it, right? Without trying to attach a story of, but I feel this way because of X, Y, Z. That's valid. But the more you're telling the story of how I was okay before I met the twin and now I'm not okay and it's because of them and I wish this never would have happened and now I'm going around, you're literally holding yourself in a plateau because you're not allowing that to collapse, right? And, you know, speaking from my own experience, this shit is hard. I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody that this is easy. It's hard. It is. Is that a belief? Sure, but it doesn't make it less hard, right? It is. But until you fully allow this process to move through you, somatically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, psychologically, right? The whole vessel, the whole vehicle, right? The ego death is knocking you loose. It's knocking you out of the lower vibratory matrix that you have been identified with your entire life. And it's painful and it's destructive on some level, and we want to run out of it. We want to run away from it. We want to use all of these things to pacify it. You know, we want to blame other people. We want to blame the twin. We want to feel victimized. We want to feel like things never worked. We want to feel abandoned. And all of that's valid, right? It is. It's all valid. It's part of your experience. But it's all part of you having to just fully allow what it is in the moment, right? It's the only way to let this stuff, you know, cycle through you so that you're actually transmuting this energy. So you're actually transmuting these programs and these conditions. And so the longer that you stay angry that this is happening or sad that this is happening, not that that's not valid, it is. But the longer that you stay in that own self-sabotaging, self-suffering way because you feel like you just wish this wasn't happening and you would never have chosen this, and what do you mean my higher self chose this, and what do you mean I'm the higher self who actually wrote this entire blueprint for me to be going through hell? I would never have done that. And so all of those sort of things, right? The mind is just going crazy, going round and round, looking for 1,000 different escape hatches. When the truth of the matter is that all that's being asked, as painful as it is for you to stand in the fire, right? For you to stop fighting, for you to allow this to come through you. You know, some people's ego death lasts a lot longer than potentially it would have if they wouldn't have fought their way through it. I am a walking example of that. So I know how it feels to fight this. I know how it feels to be pissed off and angry. I know how it feels to just want it to end, right? The whole thing. And so this video is to just really like allow people to know that you're not alone, which I say in lots of my videos, right? You're not alone. There's not 1 second that the higher self is not with you. There's not 1 second that you're not being guided and held and loved, right? There's not 1 second of that. No matter how it might feel, no matter how isolating this might feel, no matter how you might feel like you're the only one going through this and all of those sort of things, you're not the only one going through this, and you're not alone. You're fully supported as you're moving through this. It's the parts of you that are being released that are fighting back, right? It's the inner dialogue that's fighting back. It's the parts of the ego filter that are being released that we have been identified for so long with that we don't want to let go, right? And that's normal, and it's natural, and it's part of it. But it's also like having the wherewithal that the things that are making us feel so bad and so sad and so angry and so much in this place are the literal things that are asking to be broken free from you so that you no longer feel that way. And so it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a self-sabotaging prophecy, because in those moments we don't realize that the more we're fighting this and being angry about it and wanting it to stop and use tools to try to get us through it, we don't realize that we're actually holding on to the very thing that is trying to be released so that you no longer feel that way, right? So that you're no longer running that lower vibratory state anymore, right? So that your vessel is actually being flooded with light, right? So that you're actually shifting. Right? That's why it feels nice when you get into inner union. It's not because it's just some, magical place that suddenly you get. It's because you've released enough of the lower density energies, programs, and conditions that it's a default state of consciousness, right? It's the normal state of consciousness that you're going to naturally default into once you allow this other, processing of the shadow sides to come through you, right? To be seen, to be felt, to be heard, to be loved, right? All of those sort of things, right? So I just wanted to bring that through today because, like I said, I have a tremendous amount of compassion for those of you who are in this place. And I just want to let you guys know that this is part of the process. It is built in. It does have a very higher purpose. It is completely guided. And so just remind yourselves in those moments that it's feeling really, bad during ego death, that, this is just, these lower density energies, this is just these programs that are being released from me right now. And it feels hard. It does, and it feels really, really uncomfortable. But at the same time, remind yourself that this is actually being released from you so that you no longer are in this place, right? So that you're no longer in this, oscillating, place of feeling like, is this ego thing ever going to end? Is the dark night ever going to end? Am I ever going to feel good again? Am I ever going to feel happy again? Am I ever going to be okay again? The answer to that is yes, you are. But you do have to allow this process to move through you, and you do need to do your best to not fight that. And you do need to trust the fact that the higher self is guiding you all the time to do exactly that, right? Like I've said in a lot of my videos, this isn't a never-ending healing path, right? This isn't a path of, I'm going to be looking at, my wounds and my programs and my traumas for the rest of my life. That's not the purpose of this. It's not to keep you in a never-ending cycle, right? And so just have that wherewithal that you are an active participant in allowing these energies to move through and allowing the transmutation process to move through you and doing your best, not to fight your way through it so much. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that you have a beautiful day.